Beyond the buzzer, inside the game, this is Sports IQ with Larry Smith.
And coming on the show here with a laugh as we were producer Tony and I laughing here before we started the show. Sports IQ, Larry Smith, Tony Cordero is our producer. Josh Ewing is our editor. Glad you're with us here on this Thursday. September 25th. We're getting ready for another big college football weekend, but also it is Ryder Cup weekend up in New York, and we've got Scott Walker's joining us here very shortly. Good friend of the show, former CNN sports guy, ESPN Golf Channel, this guy's done it all. He's got a great podcast now and just does a great show, really knows golf. We're thrilled to have him back on the show here, and we'll talk with him a couple of minutes about what's going to happen here this weekend at Bethpage Black. Also, Jackson Fuller talking a little Arkansas, and WNBA playoffs continue. They resume tomorrow with Game 3 across the board in both of those series, semifinals. Isabel Gonzalez with CBS Sports will be joining us as well. He's getting ready for another big weekend of sports here. Hey, again, we're in the final days of the Major League Baseball regular season, so let's get a couple of highlights right now. The Guardians making history last night. The Tigers once held a 15.5-game lead in the AL Central. That lead is now officially gone. George Valera, the 2-run homer in the third. Jose Ramirez had a 2-run double in the seventh. Cleveland beating Detroit 5-1, and that gives Cleveland the lead in the Central for the first time since April. Okay, the 1914 Boston Braves were 15 games back in the National League on July 4th and rallied to win by 10.5 games, this is according to Elias. Since baseball went to division play in 1969, the biggest deficit overcome was 14 games, but the 1978 Yankees, they went on to win the AL East. Cleveland now a 1-game lead with 4 to play, and since they took the season series from Detroit, they own the tiebreaker if it comes down to that. One other note as well, this is the 19th straight game a Cleveland starter has given up 2 or fewer runs in a start. That is how they have done this. One of the most remarkable stories of the year. Again, in the history as well in Major League Baseball. Okay, elsewhere, AL East coming down to the wire as well. Garrett Crochet pitching 8 shutout innings. Masataka Yoshida and Carlos Narvaez homering. The Red Sox beat the slumping Blue Jays 7-1. Now remember, Toronto already is assured of a playoff spot. They're in the postseason. Meanwhile, in New York, Aaron Judge tied the Major League record by reaching 50 home runs for the 4th time, hitting a pair of long balls as the Yankees regained a share of the AL East lead for the first time since July, an 8-1 win over the White Sox. Max Fried won his 6th straight start. He became the Major League's first 19-game winner. He's 19-5 on the season. Talk about two teams going in opposite directions. The Yankees have won 7 of 8, while the Blue Jays have lost 6 of 7. The Astros' fall from grace is complete in the West. Cal Raleigh hit his Major League leading 59th and 60th home runs of the season. The Mariners won their 4th AL West title with a 9-2 victory over Colorado. Houston dropped their 5th straight game last night, being shut out by the A's 6-0. Now, the Astros had a 7-game lead after play on July 4th. Since then, they're just 31-39 and limping into the playoffs. It would be a massive collapse if it weren't for what's going on in the AL Central. Over in the National League, the wild card race remains the same. New York, a 1-game lead over Cincinnati and Arizona, thanks to all 3 contenders coming out on the wrong end of the scoreboard last night. Cubs took the frustration of a 5-game losing streak out on the Mets, pounding them 10-3. Neither Arizona nor Cincinnati could capitalize. Paul Skeens and the Pirates got the best of Hunter Green and the Reds 4-3, and the D-backs suffered a 5-4 loss to the Dodgers in 11 innings. College football, big news here. Looking more and more like the 12-team playoff format will stay in place at least for 2026. That's as of right now. That's the way it looks. At a college football playoff committee meeting yesterday in Chicago, leaders of the CFP committee spent less than 20 minutes of their 4-hour meeting discussing the future of expanding the playoffs, according to CFP Executive Director Rich Clark. That group has until December 1st to make any changes to the playoffs. There is not another large gathering scheduled before that, but Clark did admit that most of the discussions around expanding the playoffs and what that looks like happens in smaller group meetings away from the large group anyway. So as of right now, looks like there's 12-team, no discussion. But again, they have until December. And again, it really just takes the Big Ten and SEC to get together saying, what do you want to do? And whatever they do, that's what's going to happen. Stay tuned. But let's turn our sights to golf right now. The Ryder Cup coming up here this weekend. Bethpage Black on Long Island. And joining us now once again on the show, a good friend of ours, former CNN Sports, ESPN, Golf Channel anchor, correspondent. He's now the host of the Edge.show. Scott Walker joining us. Scott, great to have you back on the show. Let's talk Ryder Cup here. Captain Keegan Bradley, your thoughts in terms of him putting this team together, and how does this group shape up going into this weekend?
I think the biggest thing that he had, the biggest issue he had was whether or not he was going to play. And it goes to show how well he has played, given the fact that they thought that this was over for him being a player, and then he ended up playing his way into consideration. The fact that he chose that he wasn't going to play, I think, gives him a hammer with his team that other captains would not. And that hammer, Larry, is do not do anything selfish this week, because I've already done the selfless thing by being a player that could have helped this team, but taking my ego, putting it aside, and making sure I am serving you to make you the best players you can be. The moment you do that, you tell your team, I'm just not going to handle anything less than your full commitment. And I think that's the genius part of Keegan Bradley not picking himself, which I think by all rights, he would have earned his way on this team with his play over the last 2 years.
Yeah, well, it's long felt that the U.S. team, when it's just they aren't as connected as the Europeans. Will this be a more cohesive unit than we've seen in the past?
I think some of the players, I think generally speaking, the answer is yes. I think the wild card here is obviously Bryson DeChambeau, because he's playing on LIV, because he's the only LIV player on the U.S. team, because he's not around these guys all the time. I think that would be the one wild card. That said, he is, in my mind, clearly the second best player on that U.S. team. And given that, what we're finding out is that Jordan and Pittman weren't always on the same page, and yet they played pretty well together for 6 or 7 years. So bottom line is, I do think that performance matters. In terms of all the other EQ, intangible things, you've got guys like Sam Burns, who really gets along well with Scotty Scheffler, who's played well with him. Patrick Cantley, surprisingly, is the top American player from the last major played at Bethpage. So he actually tied for third in 2019 when the PGA Championship was there. Performance-wise, I think he's a guy that they're going to rally around a little bit. You've got two Georgia Bulldogs with Harris English and Russell Henley playing together. So there are a lot of little places where teammates can come together and coalesce, and all these teams break themselves down into, really since Paul Azinger did it, I believe it was in 2008, he went to a pod system where they try to get 4 players to be interchangeable and break a 12-person team down into smaller units. And there are a lot of natural 2-person units on this team. And I think given all of that, there is a little bit more unity to go, of course, with what I said about Keegan Bradley, saying, look, if there's no unity, if there's any discord, understand that I've already sacrificed for you, so get yourself in line.
Is this a year in which the U.S. team has an advantage?
So that's interesting, because I tend to think, and Europe has been the better team over the last few years. And this is a European team that blew out the Americans in Rome, and they bring back 11 of the 12 players. And the only player that wasn't there last time was Rasmus Højgaard, and his brother Nikolai was the player that he replaced. So to me, I think having those 11 of those 12 guys, 12 of 12 if you count the same surname, right? Having all of those guys understand the mission from Rome. They did a great job there, and they know that one of the ultimate challenges is winning a road Ryder Cup. It just does not happen often. It is something that the European team has been thinking about literally since the day they won in Rome, because Rory McIlroy laid the gauntlet down and said, we're going to be a team that wins a road Ryder Cup, and we're going to do it at Bethpage. He did it the day they won, and they all rallied behind that. the entire team is coming back. One twin can tell the other twin what he went through in terms of playing and participating in that team. I just think the team unity there is something that I just won't ignore. The New York factor will matter in terms of the way that the European team is accepted and approached and treated. But at the end of the day, 12 guys together, 11 of them have been through it before, and the other one can have a twin bond and figure out how to fit in. I think that unity is something that has my attention, and I think has Keegan Bradley's attention as well.
That's crazy. Talking once again with Scott Walker, host of the Edge Show. 11 of 12 returning, but again, familiarity, cohesiveness. Not to belabor the point, but what do they do that we don't when it comes to international competition?
So I'll boil it down to this. For the last 6 or 7 years, the European Tour has done a phenomenal job in creating narratives around their social media campaign. So they create content. Those players are a pivotal part of it. And one of the things that they dropped this week was a video, it was about almost 7 minutes, with the 34, I believe it was 34 players from Europe who've won an away Ryder Cup. And they spoke for nearly 7 minutes about what that meant to them. And that alone goes to tell you that this is something that matters. Being a part of a European Ryder Cup team is a rite of passage, and that legacy is shepherded and it is cultivated by the captains and the tours and the like, so that the players understand what it means immediately. And there's stories about seeing some of those best players, watching videos from past players and captains, and Rory McIlroy or John Rahm being in tears watching those inspirational videos. The moment you see that, you have to have buy-in. And that, to me, is what is different about the European team than there is about the American team, which, generally speaking, has had, Tiger Woods, Phil Mickelson, has had a number of great players. But teams come from a shared vision, from a shared mission. And I think Europe has had that for many, many years, since 1979, when continental Europe was added. And I think this generation of players, starting with Rory McIlroy, starting with John Rahm, have both taken the lessons from those great players in the past, and they're teaching it now to those younger players. And that, I think, is the difference in what we see from a European Ryder Cup spirit.
Oh, okay. Well, Bethpage Black, side of golf majors in the past and the stage this weekend, what kind of challenges does this course provide?
It's just stupid long. Right. I mean, that was the one thing. My trip around Bethpage was 2002 when they first had it there, and when Tiger beat Mickelson by 3, and it's just really, really long, and so ultimately that is going to be the thing that, if Europe has a problem, it's going to be, can some of their players handle that length and be able to make birdies, the birdies that are needed in match play. I think, generally speaking, that shouldn't be a problem. When you have Rory and John Rahm and Ludwig Aberg, those guys are certainly long enough to handle this. Robert McIntyre is another one that has great power and can handle that. The question, I think that's the biggest thing. Right now, the rough is not from reports, not up high. So the American team has tried to set it up so that their bombers can go out there, find a way to make birdies, and try to limit the European foursomes advantage, the alternate shot advantage that Europe generally tends to have. That's really, to me, the only thing that creates doubt. And then, of course, the New York crowd. New York crowd mercilessly taunted Sergio Garcia in 2002. It probably still has some scars with Sergio, even though he's a major champion after that. To me, those are the only two things that can really stop a European victory. That, and the fact that Scotty Scheffler can only play 5 matches. If you could play 10 matches, then I'd say, the Americans would be overwhelming favorites, but you can only play 5 and you need 14 points to win. And I think generally speaking, on a neutral course, I would pick Europe every day of the week. Those are the two factors, the length of Bethpage Black and the New York crowd, that could stop a European road Ryder Cup win.
All right, Scott, finally here, 24 golfers out there. What do the Americans have to do to come away with a victory on Sunday?
So to me, the central focus, the central player is Scotty Scheffler. I mean, he's going to play 5 matches unless he's hurt. He's going to play 5 matches. Let's assume we can write him down for 4 points. Okay, great. You still need 14 and a half points total to win. And even if Scotty Scheffler plays the way that he's capable of playing, can you find 10 and a half points from those other players? And that to me is the question mark that's the biggest question mark for Keegan Bradley. Can Patrick Cantlay, who finished 3rd in that 2019 PGA Championship and was the best American player then in that event, can he find form to be able to play well on a golf course that he has tended to like? Can Justin Thomas find a way to really tap into the type of player that he was when he was winning major championships? And can Bryson DeChambeau be that number 1 to Scotty Scheffler? Those would be the key things that I would think about. And ultimately, the one thing about Ryder Cup captains, and this is where Luke Donald, as a winning captain last year, will be tested. Ryder Cup really, you don't play defense in golf, but in theory, the captain can play defense. And so to me, I would be like the basketball coach that says, look, Jordan or Kobe can score 50 on me. I'm just going to shut everyone else down. To me, if I were them, I would take Jon Rahm and I would take Rory McIlroy, and I would never put him up against Scotty Scheffler. I would make sure to secure those points against the rest of an American team that I'm not sure is up to the consistent standard that Scheffler is. That would be my strategy. That would be where I would focus, all my attention. And the real question is, can guys like Cantlay, can guys like Justin Thomas, and players like Bryson DeChambeau find enough of their talent and their peak performance to win? I think those are the key players you need to look at this weekend.
All right, great stuff. Scott Walker, as always, man, we appreciate you. Scott Walker, once again, hosted the Edge.show. Be sure to check that out. It's really cool. Just sign up and easy to get in. Great tips there. And somebody, again, who's been covering golf and been working for network sports for longer than what you may think. He's such a young-looking guy, just does that age. Scott, great to have you on the show. Sports IQ continues here. Coming up, in a bit, we still will talk WNBA playoffs with Isabel Gonzalez. Up next, though, big matchup in Fayetteville. We'll talk about that here on the Sports IQ.
You're listening to Sports IQ with Larry Smith.
More college football now. A big game in Arkansas with Notre Dame up to number 22 now, taking on Arkansas. Noon kickoff Eastern time on ABC. Joining us once again back on the show. First time since basketball. Good to have him back. Jackson Fuller. He's the Arkansas sports writer for the Southwest Times Record. Jackson, welcome back to the show. Arkansas 2-2 right now. It feels like your coach down there is just forever in hot water. A win would really help him maybe get off to the counter and dry off a little bit, get out of the frying pan.
Yeah, I got this job coming into the 2023 season when Arkansas had a returning quarterback, a returning running back, and high expectations, and the season went in the toilet pretty much right away. And ever since then, Sam's been on the hot seat. They desperately need a win, but even a win this weekend, he's still going to be on the hot seat. You just can't go on the road and lose to Memphis and expect the fans to have some patience with you. So I think a win kind of saves him for a week, but this is going to have to be a culmination at the end of the season of progress. And right now the trend isn't looking that way.
Yeah. What's the psyche like of this team? We've talked about in terms of every team comes out of training camp excited, and then you get into the season and reality hits one way or another. What's the psyche like right now with the Razorback program?
They're saying the right things. And I do think entering last week, the psyche was good because, you go on the road. Ole Miss was a top 15 team. they were one fumble away from pulling off a pretty significant, meaningful upset in that game, getting the season off to a great start. And I don't think there was any dash of confidence after that. But then you lose to Memphis. Like I said, they're saying the right things, but who knows? I think this is a huge test for them, that they have to show that they're not going to let go of the rope. They're still fighting for their coaches, for their teammates. But at the same time, it's hard to kind of imagine you go on the road and lose to Memphis, and then you're going to come back home and beat last year's national championship runner-up. Mm-hmm. I know Notre Dame's having its struggles this season, but I don't know. It just feels like a very tough spot for Arkansas. If they can respond and come out and play the Irish tight or get the upset, I do think it is an endorsement of the coaching staff and the senior leadership on this team.
Yeah, speaking of seniors, your quarterback, Taylon Green's a senior, putting up some big numbers overall, leading the team, obviously in passing, but also rushing, 64% completion, but had a couple of picks in that loss to Memphis. Talk about his play and how he needs to bounce back from that.
He's been good, I think, overall. I mean, really good overall. The picks against Memphis, one of them was just him trying to maybe do too much, rolling out of the pocket, throwing the ball a little bit down the field, and the safety made a good play. I don't really blame him too much for that. That's a play Taylon Green makes a lot of times. He made it a couple possessions later, connecting with tight end Rohan Jones down the field. But the second pick was something that we saw a lot from Taylon last year, where it's just like, hey, what are you looking at? Like the defender's right there. It threw it right to him. Like what is the read there? It just didn't really make sense. And it came in a critical spot. I think Arkansas was either in the red zone or right outside of the red zone late in the second half. So again, it just feels like, man, it's hard to know what to expect from this team because they've played so well. They're 2 fumbles away from being 4-0, but at the same time, there are some similar mistakes that are creeping up. You mentioned the interceptions, but Taylon last year, he took too many awful sacks that would push them out of field goal range or ruin a drive. And he did the same thing against Memphis in the fourth quarter last week. So I don't know. I mean, overall, like if I'm grading his season so far, it's a A- or a B+, and that's kind of tough to think that your quarterback has to be an A+ for you to win games. And that's kind of what it feels like right now for Arkansas.
Yeah, almost 1,200 yards passing, 12 touchdowns to 4 picks for Green. Is that what has plagued this team as you've seen it now for a third season? Like you said, it feels like on paper this team should be doing more than what they are. I mean, is it just a little mental errors at the wrong times that has caused this program some problems?
Yes and no. I think you definitely can point to certain instances over the course of the last 3 years where they shoot themselves in the foot. But I think the difference between this year's team and the past 2 is the offensive line. The last 2 years, the offensive line was abysmal. Last year, they made some strides, but still not good enough for an SEC offensive line. This year, their offensive line's been really good. They're protecting Taylon, almost all game. The running backs, I think, all of them are averaging. Every ball carrier is averaging over 5 yards a carry for the most part. So in that sense, it's like this year's team, it feels almost more like what you're saying, where they're just making one too many mistakes. Where last year, there were real issues with that team. Now, I mean, we have just been pretty much talking about the offense. I do think there are real issues with the defense that whether they can overcome those, I'm not so sure. But offensively, it does feel like it's just 1 or 2 mistakes every game that end up deciding whether they win or lose.
Yeah, I understand that. Talking once again with Jackson Fuller. He's the Arkansas sports writer for the Southwest Times Record. Arkansas hosting number 22 Notre Dame. You mentioned the Irish having their struggles, but boy, I tell you what, for a team that opened with a couple of tough losses to ranked teams, they may be one of the most formidable 1 and 2 teams you ever see. What concerns you about the Irish in this game against the Hogs?
The running game is by far number 1. Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price are terrific. Arkansas did well against the run against Ole Miss, and I think people were optimistic that, hey, maybe this defense will be better against the run than we thought. But now, kind of separating from that game and then putting the Memphis tape in addition to it, I think maybe Ole Miss might not be as good running the football as we imagine, because Memphis ran for nearly 300 yards against Arkansas. It's just the play up front, and then I grew up a Miami fan, so I watched that Notre Dame Miami game in week 1 very, very closely. And man, I was so impressed with CJ Carr and the way he can extend the pocket, make plays. He did not get flustered in a road environment. I think, it's really the entire Notre Dame offense gives me concern if I'm Arkansas, but if it's 2 things, it's containing the run game and then can they force CJ Carr into some mistakes on the road? If you want to beat a ranked team at home, you have to find a way to create a turnover or two, force some mistakes. And Carr looks pretty poised, and I'm not sure if Arkansas is going to be able to get those turnovers that they need.
Yeah, I was impressed with that game too. As a redshirt freshman, first time out. Like you said, a hostile environment. It's a loud stadium anyway, even louder since they put the awning up there, and so. But I was as impressed again, and we said on the show, Notre Dame lost, but no shame in his game or the Irish. Interesting that Lou Holtz will be there at the game, and of course, he coached Arkansas, later coached Notre Dame. What will the reaction be like from the fans for Lou, or is that too long ago for the fans to remember?
It might be too long ago, but I think he's going to get a good reaction. I mean, he accomplished so much here at Arkansas, and it was kind of a controversial way with his exit. At the time, there were reports about what was going on, but no official statement from Frank Broyles about it and everything. So I think there's going to be a warm reception. Enough time has passed where even if there were some issues with it, I don't think that's going to be remembered. But yeah, it feels like he's done a lot since then. You talk about coaching Notre Dame, his ESPN personality. The Arkansas fans that are going to be at the game probably know him more from those two things than him actually coaching at Arkansas.
Yeah, looking at the schedule here for the Razorbacks moving forward, and look, any SEC team, you're going to face a ton of ranked teams. I mean, I don't care how the schedule falls; it's just the way that it is. Literally looking at the schedule, the 8 games remaining, 6 are against teams currently in top 25. Another is Auburn, which has been in the top 25. Boy, how do you manage a gauntlet like this when you're a program like Arkansas? That's not one of the elite teams in the conference, if that's fair to say, but you're still a good program. How do you manage a gauntlet like this? And then you go out of conference and play a team like Notre Dame.
Brutal, huh? And you go out of conference and you play a road game at Memphis, which is a college football playoff contender for the Group of 5 spot. Right. I don't know, whoever made this schedule, not giving your head coach an easy road here. But I think, and that's kind of what makes the Memphis and Ole Miss losses so crushing is, those were opportunities. You were right there for two wins and you didn't come through, and now you've got this schedule. However, I do think the one thing that Arkansas is going to be able to do this year is, I don't know how many games they're going to win, but I'm pretty confident they're going to be right there in the fourth quarter more times than not. You look at the spread for this week, I can't believe it's like down to 4.5, 3.5 right now. Like, it just feels like Arkansas is going to be in these games because they have a great offense, a great offensive coordinator in Petrino, a great quarterback, but somehow they got to find a way to pull a couple off. Last year, the Tennessee game kind of sticks out as like the one that maybe saved Sam Pittman's job, really kind of got them bowl eligible if they don't get that game done. Is there a game like that on the schedule? I mean, shoot, it might be Notre Dame, right? A team coming here, but I don't know. It's going to be very difficult, and it feels like if they do lose this game heading into a bye week, there's going to have to be some real look in the mirror type stuff. Otherwise, the season could go off the rails pretty quickly.
Yeah, in past times we'd say, well, it's fine. They'll, if he gets through, make a decision end of the year. We've already seen right now. I mean, how many coaches fired in September? So hopefully, if they lose, Pittman still has a job and they come back from the bye week. And again, nothing against him. It's just the era of college football, the way things are right now. These ADs and these universities, these athletic programs are not hesitating to make change. We've seen that already with some major programs. Jackson, always great to get your insights. Enjoy the game coming up here Saturday, noon Eastern on ABC, and hopefully we get a chance to talk again soon.
Thanks, guys. Pleasure to join y'all.
All right, thanks, buddy. Appreciate it. Jackson Fuller once again talking about this weekend's game. Arkansas sports writer for the Southwest Times Record. And again, number 22, Notre Dame is at Arkansas. Looking forward to that game. So many here this weekend. All right, we've got more to come. Stay here. It's the Sports IQ.
Everything is expensive right now. Gas, food, you name it. You're spending more, you are making the same or less money. So, what do? You rack up credit card debt. That's what you do. It's not your fault. It's the economy. And guess what? If you rack up too much credit card debt like some of us, you can't pay your bills. Then the credit card companies, as nice as they are, start hounding you for money. Then you start your downward spiral. A smart thing for you to do is to call the Zero Debt. They can help you consolidate all your credit card bills into one affordable payment. Millions of people have done it. It works to make you debt-free. Make this free call right now. It costs you nothing to learn more.
800-507-7293. 800-507-7293. 800-507-7293. That's 800-507-7293.
You're locked in to Sports IQ with Larry Smith.
Let's talk about WNBA right now. And joining us once again on the show, rejoining us, I should say, is Isabel Gonzalez. She's a basketball writer for CBS Sports. Isabel, great to see you. Got a chance to bump into you in July as our paths crossed at a WNBA game there in Chicago. I want to first get your thoughts on the MVP pick here over the weekend. Napheesa Collier had the great first half, looked like she was a shoo-in for this. She then gets injured. Asia comes on like gangbusters, and now here she is, the first 4-time MVP.
Yeah, honestly, I feel like the competition was really close all season. Well, maybe not so much at the beginning because the Aces were really struggling. But you also had AT competing as well. Like she was a pretty solid candidate in my opinion. But I think what really made a difference for voters was probably just what Asia did with the Aces it's incredible. 17-game winning streak. I think it was 16 during the regular season. So that in itself, it's so amazing. And then the fact that, Napheesa did get injured. I know with the WNBA, they don't have the same rule as the NBA, where you have to play a specific percentage of games to be, to qualify for MVP. But I feel like that also affected it in a way. But at least for me, I didn't have a vote this year, but at least for me, like when we did our roundup for CBS Sports, to me, it was just what Asia did was incredible leadership. She's really strong on both sides of the court. And just the way she lifts her team up every single night, she just deserved it. She really did. I do still think Napheesa is a star. So it was interesting. Of course, I thought it was going to be a lot closer, to be completely honest. But well deserved for sure.
Yeah, I'm with you. I do think the games missed. Like you said, there is no mandate in the W, but at the same time, the games missed. I think that it was a factor. I went on the Ion show, probably 6 weeks ago and kind of said, hey, Napheesa, when she's in the middle of missing those games, no MVP. No one has missed more than 5 games and still won MVP. And that was Jonquel Jones back in 2021. At that time, Napheesa had missed 7. I think total she was maybe 10 or 11. I didn't go back and look, but I do think that's part of that. But I think, too, it's a credit to the WNBA and how competitive it is that Napheesa Collier, with the numbers she had, only the second to shoot 50%, 40%, 90%. I think Elena Donadon was the only other one that did that. Obviously, Lisa Thomas, a walking triple-double. Alicia Gray, what she did with Atlanta. Kelsey Mitchell carrying Indiana in the with Caitlin Clark being out. And that's just scratching the surface, just the top 5. There's so many other players. It's a credit to where the W is right now in terms of a competition standpoint.
Oh, absolutely. And I mean, the fact that Minnesota didn't really fall off either, that just says the entire team is so good. Like, if anything, her issue was the fact that her team was just so talented. But yeah, there's so much talent in the WNBA. So I was so excited to be on your show because obviously we're going to talk about like all that excitement. And the Fever honestly have been one of the most interesting teams for me to watch because everybody thought, they were done with all the injuries. But what a season. It's been such an exciting season overall.
Yeah, it really has. And let's talk about the Fever in terms of, I think 5, 6, I've lost count how many season-ending injuries this team had, including the superstar Caitlin Clark. And yet here they are. They lose the other night in game 2, so now they go home for game 3 in this best-of-5 series, tied at 1. But what an emotional win in the game 3 in the opening round on the road at Atlanta to move on, and then a surprise Las Vegas at their place. This is a team that they just don't quit. And I think it's what a credit to them to have Mitchell and Aaliyah Boston and Natasha Howard and all the players who are, Odyssey Sims find a way to do this with first-year coach Stephanie White. It's one of the great stories here this summer, now early fall.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, it's just incredible. You have so many injured players, which obviously is going to affect your bench. And in the playoffs, like that's super important. But it's just been so cool to see other players step up. I know a lot of people talked about Caitlin being just like the heart of the team, but they're showing that that's kind of not necessarily true. Like they're still really good without Caitlin. They don't necessarily need her for everything. Of course, they would be a lot stronger if she was around, but we have to give credit to the players who are on the court. And I think Aaliyah Boston, like people don't talk enough about her. Even when she was in college, I think, she was a quiet leader. She obviously showed some great stuff in the stat sheet, but she wasn't as flashy as, like, a Caitlin Clark. And the way she's been developing through her WNBA career, she's still pretty young. It's just been awesome to see. And for me, one of the key pieces for that first win against Las Vegas was Boston's defense on Asia Wilson. And that shouldn't be taken lightly. Like, the way she's defended her, I wrote it down. I think she, when Asia played, was guarded by Leah Boston during the regular season, Asia went 34.2% from the field. Like, that's impressive. That's Asia Wilson, MVP Asia Wilson. So Boston deserves a lot of credit. I think yesterday, a lot of like what Las Vegas did was that Asia wasn't going to be doing a lot of one-on-one against Boston, and that kind of helped. But credit to her, credit to all the other players who just have so much fight in them for sure, and obviously like Kelsey Mitchell, but everybody really.
Yeah. What does Indiana have to do? So it's an even series right now. Indiana has home court edge. If they win these next two, they go to the finals. Game 5 would be back in Vegas. I believe it's 2-2-1. What does Indiana have to do here to get these next two wins and pull off the upset and advance?
See, it's going to be really hard because Las Vegas is not a team that does well after they lose. So obviously they already showed it. They bounced back. They showed it after that, what was it, 53-point loss against Minnesota, and then they went on that winning streak. So they know how to bounce back, and they kind of take things personally. So I think playing at home is going to help. Obviously, like, the Indiana crowd is amazing. They're some of the best fans in WNBA. But it's also going to take just being really smart and showing up and probably throwing the first punch. You're going to have to defend Asia for sure. So, trying to get a lead on her as much as possible. But I think Kelsey Mitchell also kind of had a bit of an off game. Obviously, that has to do a lot with the Aces defense, because they are really good at defense. So we can't not credit that. But it's just going to have to be bounce back, learn from those mistakes. I feel like the Aces did watch that film and made a lot of adjustments from game 1. So, for game 2, make sure, you keep defending. Don't let the game kind of get away. Don't let someone get really hot, especially Asia. And, there's other players too in Las Vegas that can score. And like we mentioned earlier, the injuries kind of affect Indiana because you don't really have a big bench, They didn't get a lot of production there in the last game. I think it was 6 points from their bench in game 2. And then Las Vegas had 24. That's a huge difference. So you got to be locked in the entire time.
Yeah. Stephanie Weiss done a great job in her first year there. But then again, you've got Becky Hammond on the other side. And masterful, she wasn't going to win Coach of the Year because obviously Natalie Nakase with the expansion Golden State deserved that. Carl Smesko, in my opinion, is a 1B right behind. He deserved it as well. But what Becky Hammond has done this year in Las Vegas, winning the 2 titles, this team for 3/4 of the season was not playing the way a Becky Hammond team plays, but they've come on so strong. It feels like even though they're on the road for 2 of the next 3, it's still advantage Las Vegas right now just because of all the things that you mentioned. And again, if a push comes to shove, you're back in Vegas with the Rockets crowd at home for game 5.
Yeah, for sure. I think she said, Becky Hammond said that Asia Wilson does not like 2 stinkers in a row. She's right. And Becky Hammond, the way she coaches, I mean, you saw it at the beginning of the season when the Aces weren't necessarily playing their best basketball. A lot of that had to do with chemistry, of course. But you didn't see a lot of urgency sometimes. Yeah, the third quarter issues and stuff. And Becky Hammond doesn't play around. You can tell, she's very serious. When they were asked about the winning streak, she was like, I don't care. They're not really allowed to celebrate that because we're starting over. So yeah, I think right now she's going to say, okay, we won this one, but don't get too excited because it's going to be tough in Indiana. You got to keep that same energy. You got to make sure, we don't get embarrassed again. We have to prove that we can make it this far. So for me, yeah, you're right. Even though they're going to play in Indiana, and I still feel like it could be close, Las Vegas just has that momentum. And once they're really locked in, I feel like it will be really hard for the Fever to stop them. I think maybe game 1, they didn't play maybe with as much urgency as they should have. But I feel like now they've kind of woken up a little bit more.
Yeah, no, that's fair. And the other series now, it's Minnesota, Phoenix, bit of a surprise. Minnesota, the huge lead in game 2. They squandered that, falling overtime to the Mercury. So now Phoenix goes home, back to the Valley. They have home court edge. What do you take of Minnesota right now in terms of psychologically? How do they use these couple of days off now to get right for game 3?
I mean, that's tough. You give up a 20-point lead and then you lose in overtime. that is really tough. So I think you have to take kind of like the Aces approach, like use that as motivation to really bounce back. I feel like yes, a lot of it had to do with what Minnesota did wrong, but also you got to give credit to the Mercury because coming back from 20 points against the number one seed, the best team, like I think everybody can agree, like they've been the most consistent team all season. So that's not an easy job. But I love the intensity Alyssa Thomas plays with. Honestly, just she's so locked in. And then just the team overall, like it's amazing. I think one of the people that the Mercury were highlighting was Kat Westfeld, the rookie. And she only played like 14, 15 minutes. And her defense on that third quarter, that kind of helped the Mercury spark runs. So I think for the Lynx is going to be, yes, of course, it has to do with AT. She had that quote about Nafisa, like she has to guard me too, which I totally get. But they're going to have to pay attention to other players as well. You can't let Kat Westbelt beat you on defense, Like you're going to have to lock in, pay attention to everybody. And honestly, it's going to be just like a mental thing to me. Don't let an overtime loss like that get to you.
Yeah. It's, and you do have in a coach with Minnesota, Cheryl Reeve, 4-time champion, trying to become a record, the first ever to win 5 titles there with the Lynx. But again, on the other side, the Phoenix is one of those teams that, for most of the season was right there in the top 3. Kind of fell off a little inconsistent toward the end, but they have the goods, there's no question, to get the win in this series. And again, both series continuing Friday night. You can see those on ESPN. Want to get your thoughts as well about the 2 coach firings. One, not much as a surprise. The other was a big shocker. Seattle parting ways with Noel Quinn. Got back to the playoffs, but first round ousters both years. Speaking of consistency, they never got that. But in New York, the defending champion Liberty deciding not to bring Sandy Brondello back next year. That was one that was a surprise considering all the injuries that they had and yet still finished 5th in the league.
Yeah, that one, I mean, Seattle, I can understand a little more. But with New York, I was definitely shocked because she won last year. And I don't know, like to me, that's still a big deal. It wasn't 5 years ago, it wasn't 10 years ago, it was last year. And like you said, there were a lot of injuries, so that does affect the lineups and stuff. I saw a stat, I forgot to write it down, but they had like one of the most like lineup changes in the season or like ever, I don't know. But like you still made it to the playoffs. I feel like part of it wasn't, I don't know, like it was sort of her fault, but not really. Like the Liberty wasn't as locked in as I would have liked them to be in the playoffs. They didn't play the way New York Liberty plays basketball. I don't know what it was. It might have been just tiredness. I don't know. But either way, you still made it that far with all the injuries and to a lot of key players. So that was really shocking. I don't really know who is going to replace her. I think she did a really great job with the team. But who knows? Maybe we'll be surprised.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I've got about 30 seconds left here. Look into your crystal ball. Who wins the title? Who cuts down the nets when it's all said and done?
I'm going to say Minnesota. I don't know. They've been so consistent all season. I do feel like Las Vegas could prove me wrong. And there's other teams that are obviously playing really hard, but I think Minnesota is going to take it.
Yeah, I think I'm with you. The Aces are intriguing, but I think, like you said, Minnesota's been there all year. I think they actually won the season series as well, if I'm not mistaken. But anyway, we will see. Hey, we're out of time. Isabel, always great to talk with you. Safe travels here during the season. And we know women's college hoops starting up very soon. Hopefully we can talk about that here in the near future.
For sure. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much. Once again, Isabel Gonzalez. She's a basketball writer for CBS Sports. Catch her stuff there. Fantastic young talent in the journalism world and does great work and hopefully get a chance again. Definitely check out what she does with CBS Sports. Okay, we've got more Sports IQ just getting started here on this Thursday. Coming up after this.
We all make more than 35,000 decisions a day. Most are small, but some can be life-changing.
When it comes to taking care of yourself, the most important choices can be hard to make. Like having a tough conversation instead of ignoring a buddy's call.
Or being there for support, not assuming things will just get better. Make the decision to be there for the veterans in your life, for your community, for yourself. Learn more at BeThereForVeterans.com.
We're mentioned at the top of the show that the baseball season is winding down, coming to a close here this weekend. Producer Tony jumping in. Tony, we've been talking all season long, and if there's we've talked about the AL West, how crazy that is. The East has tied up, and our friend Matt Snyder, CBS Sports, mentioned before. He told us, 6 weeks ago, listen, this is going to be insane at the end, and it is. The Detroit Tigers look like, they're a team that we were just penciling into, the World Series 2 months ago, and now, will they host round one?
Yeah. We talked in July, and like you said, we just put them in the playoffs. Okay, the Central is done.
Yeah.
We said we're going to start looking more and more at these baseball races and see what's going on. And we talked at the trade deadline and said, okay, the Central's over. That race is done. Pencil one team into the playoffs. They're good. This has just been an epic collapse. There's two teams, suffering from epic collapses right now. The Astros, the Tigers. Just to see them struggling to get to the end of the regular season is just shocking. And you know what? I'm going to put part of the blame on the Detroit general manager. You didn't learn from the Baltimore Orioles. They were a preseason favorite. They went out and got Charlie Morton. You took Charlie off their hands. Their season went up. Yeah, they didn't make the playoffs, but they got a little better after that.
Yeah.
You acquired Charlie Morton, and the season has gone very south very quickly. So, nothing personal, Charlie, but it is what it is. Their starting rotation, the top two have been awesome. Tariq Skubal's been awesome. But after that, it's really just been a dumpster fire for the Tigers. They haven't been able to shore that up at all coming down the stretch here. And it's really shown, and the hitting is now not happening. And let's give credit to the Guardians. When you can throw out starting pitchers 19 games in a row and give 2 runs or less in the modern era of Major League Baseball, where homers fly at incredible rates, something's happening right in Cleveland. Somebody is living right.
Yeah, that is. If it were like the '90s Braves with Maddox, Glavine, and Smoltz, it'd be one thing. But yeah, you're exactly right. Throw it out there. And here's a crazy stat: you look at the runs scored and runs allowed for Cleveland. Their differential is -2, and yet they're a division leader. That just tells you, one, how much they struggled before this past month, and then how strong they've been to close that gap here with all this great pitching they've had.
Yeah, they were like well into the minus numbers coming into like mid-August, right?
Yeah.
It was -30, -40. You're thinking, okay, this team probably isn't going to make the playoffs. Well, I don't know what switch they pulled, but they pulled the right one, and they have really turned things around. And, hats off too to the Mariners for winning the West out there. Cal Raleigh is just having an unbelievable season. Look, for some of you baseball card collectors out there, if you were smart enough to put some Cal Raleigh rookie cards away, nice move. And hopefully there's one of those parallels, those green, orange, blues. Save those. They might be worth some money at some point because the value is only going up on those. But they've done a great job. And the Astros, you thought they made some key moves. They got Carlos Correa back at the deadline. They looked to shore up the bullpen. But boy, they've just had all 4 wheels fall off, just like the Tigers have in the last little bit here. And they can't get it. Now they're fighting for their playoff lives at this point because the wild card is the only possibility for them.
Yeah. It's been crazy. Again, as Matt said, totally nuts. There is no dominant team still as we head into the playoffs next week. Who are the 2 teams you would pick today to meet in the World Series? Do you have 2 favorites?
Well, when in July I said Tigers, I'm taking that off the board. I'm going to remove that. That ain't happening. Pat on Tony. Check that off. So here's my new prediction. Please, people, don't bet money on this. I would hate to see somebody, have to sell their house because of what I'm saying. Right now, the team that's playing the best right now in the American League, I think there's 2. I think it's Seattle and New York. In New York, that offense has really come alive. The bullpen's gotten a little stronger. I don't know if they had a come to Jesus meeting on that team, but they have really proven that they are the real deal. So I like either New York or Seattle coming out of the American League. The National League, I still think it's probably going to be Phillies or Brewers. One of those 2 teams. It could be the Dodgers, but boy, that Dodger bullpen is just a shambles. They are a train wreck each and every time they come into a game, even when they manage to get a save or a win. They got a save the other day where the bullpen came in through 3 innings and gave up like 6 walks. It's like,
Yeah.
You can't do that in the playoffs. That's not going to fly.
Yeah.
So I'm really worried about that Dodger pen. I still think it'll be Brewers or Phillies coming out of the National League. The wild card teams don't look to impress me at all. The Mets are really limping like peg leg Bates into the postseason at this point.
By the way, the entire country took the Tigers off the board, so no one's going to blame you for that. All right. Our moment of Oz up next.
Fans of big sports radio and sports spectacular podcasts have a new home on the Chief Sports Network. Find your favorite programs and content all in one place by downloading the Chief Sports app in your mobile device. Created in South Carolina, the Chief Sports Network is the home of an expanding network of live and podcast format programming. It is also the home of one of the leading national college football podcasts, JC and Morgan, hosted by ESPN's Mike Morgan and 24/7 Sports' JC Sherbert. Download the Chief Sports app for free and find all of your favorite programming under one easy umbrella. Thanks to all of our markets for your loyal support of Big Sports Radio and our Sports Spectacular podcast, and we look forward to connecting with you anywhere in the world on the Chief Sports app.
Okay, time now for your moment of awe. We want to send out our best wishes to Sister Jean. She is calling it a career as a campus minister and men's basketball team chaplain at Loyola Chicago. You know the name from the 2018 run to the Final Four. She became an icon. She's 106 years old, and she's having some health problems. Sure she is. So we wish her the very best health-wise there in Chicago. We will miss seeing her on the sidelines. It was always great to see her there rooting on the team. Sister Gina, 106 years old, retiring. We all should be so lucky to work until we're 106 years old. By the way, a shout out to my great Aunt Dee, also in Chicago. She turns 97 on Saturday. Also fantastic, just like Sister Jean. Okay, it's our moment of awe. Appreciate our guests coming by. Scott Walker, Jackson Fuller, Isabel Gonzalez. Appreciate you as well. It's a Sports IQ. One more day this week on Friday. We'll make it a good one. We'll see you then.
Thanks for listening to Sports IQ with Larry Smith, Monday through Friday. Continue the conversation at Sports IQ LS. We'll see you next time.